Welcome to the Exhale podcast, a candid conversation about current matters relating to respiratory diagnostic and lung health. You might have seen a new look to our podcast. We're implementing some changes to our podcast and to invest in our brand, which in turn will hopefully reach new listeners and turn them into die-hard loyal fans. Today's hosts are Mark Russell, Marketing Communications Manager, and Troy Pridgeon, the Executive Vice President of Sales and Operations for Vitagraph in North America, a global leader in respiratory diagnostics. Today, we meet Donna Appell and Carman Camacho with the Hermansky-Pudlak Syndrome Network. We learn about this rare disease and how these two women are fighting for a cure.
Well, Donna and Carman, welcome to our podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, please give a little bit of backgrounds on both of you, education and experience, and what your current responsibilities are.
Sure. I guess I'll go first. My name is Donna Appell, and I am by training a registered nurse. And my biggest education, though, was having a daughter with Hermansky-Pudlak Syndrome. I worked for 22 years in an open heart ICU, but I am presently overwhelmed with my job as the executive director of the Hermansky-Pudlak Syndrome Network.
And my name is Carman Camacho, and I am a clinical therapist. I have a master's degree in psychology, and currently that's my job outside the network. And inside the network is also as the clinician for the network. I support families and get them through diagnosis or the journey of lung transplant if they need a lung transplant, or their journey if they decide not to do a lung transplant. So we provide a lot of support and encouragement and education to our members.
Well, thanks for that background very much, Donna and Carman. I was very interested to learn of Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome. I've worked in sleep diagnostics and respiratory diagnostics for some time, and I have to confess, I really wasn't that familiar with it. Can you give us a little bit of background of how many types there are?
Sure. There are 11. Now there are 11 different genes that cause Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome. The last one was identified, just this past year. Basically, it is a metabolic genetic disorder that causes albinism, legal blindness, a platelet bleeding disorder, and some people develop a Crohn's-like colitis, like an inflammatory bowel disease. And the most difficult part is that everybody with HPS 1, 2, and 4 develop a fatal pulmonary fibrosis.
So what are the signs and symptoms of HBS?
Well, this is a syndrome, so we have a variety of signs and symptoms. The main one, the one that kind of identify all of us for the same, is the lack of platelets. So we don't clot. Platelets are lacking dense bodies. So the lack of dense bodies, which is who holds the material to help the blood clot, is not there. So all the HPS from 1 to 11, all of us have that. We also have albinism. Everybody with HPS has albinism, which is lack of pigment in their eyes and the skin and the hair. Not everybody with albinism has HPS, but everybody with HPS will have albinism. We also have nystagmus and low vision. We have people with HPS 3 who are major bleeders, and we also have people with HPS 1, 2, and 4 who can develop lung disease. HPS 2 is characterized by also very susceptible to infections. Because we're such a rare disorder, we are always still learning. So every day we learn something new.
I think our urgency is always about the lung disease, and we are hoping that the other gene types don't carry the lung disease, but we're very nervous about our HPS 1, 2, and 4 individuals. It's something that they know from birth, you never know when you're going to develop IPF or pulmonary fibrosis over the course of your lifetime, but in our case, we do. We know that when somebody's born, it's like a genetic crystal ball that this pulmonary fibrosis is ahead of them. So it's a little frightening for our families.
Mm-hmm.
I can only imagine it would be, as all genetic disorders in particular can be. And it sounds like there's a wide range of different symptoms of the syndrome, the IPF being a particular concern, I would imagine. Is there a specific group or demographic type who it affects above others?
Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome is all over the world. We have people and our members that are from South America, all the way to Europe, Australia, but we have a big concentration of people with HPS in Puerto Rico, and it's due to the founder's effect. We're an island, so our genetic material stays within the island. So of course, there's going to be a higher concentration of a rare disorder in an island. So we are pretty high. I think that in Puerto Rico, 1 in 20 in the northwest side of the island are carriers of the HPS gene. So that's pretty high.
That is. Recently in the news that they had a hurricane 5 years to the day here recently. I'm not sure when this podcast is going to air, but tell us what's going on down there in Puerto Rico and how are they adjusting to this terrible hurricane within 5 years?
It's devastating. Sad to watch this from a distance because I am in Massachusetts, so I see all my family down there and they're struggling with the lack of electricity. Hospitals are having to be closed because they don't have electricity or they flooded. Our people with that has pulmonary fibrosis are having to rely on generators to get their oxygen needs. So it's pretty scary. And they had already gone through Maria first, and they had the tremors and earthquakes, and now this. So it was already the structural part of Puerto Rico was already very weak. So this has not helped. And even the clinic had to be moved because of the conditions right now. So it is affecting us very closely.
You can only imagine how frightening it is to rely on oxygen and during these times. Like, from what we're hearing, people that have a generator can't even run it all day long. They have to preserve it, and they are running it only during certain hours of the day. And it's just heartbreaking. I was amazed, not being of Puerto Rican background, but I even came to understand that another weather-related issue is that during the summer, they get a Burma, they get a sandstorm from the Sahara, so that people have a really hard time breathing. There's no air-conditioned air. Like, I use air purifiers for my daughter here, and they're pretty much open-air people, and it's just, my heart is just broken. It's just absolutely broken for this population.
Well, and not only that, the generator can be a godsend, but it can also be damaging because the fumes from generators are not good for our people either. So we're kind of in a catch-22. You need the electricity, but you also can get worse by inhaling all these fumes. So it's pretty difficult.
So a follow-up question, who are the doctors or the heroes down there that are working in Puerto Rico that are dealing with some of these patients with HPS?
We are so blessed. I can't even tell you. We are so blessed with the angels down there. So starting with actually Dr. Jesse Roman from the American Thoracic Society, we, having worked with the ATS, saw that he had been trained in Puerto Rico and, started a relationship with him to get him to understand the plight of the HPS people. And he became an incredible hero for us. And he worked out the details and helped to establish the clinics in Puerto Rico. And they were the first pulmonary fibrosis clinics in the Caribbean, not just in Puerto Rico. Mm-hmm. So he has been amazing. And from that and our relationships, we have started working in Puerto Rico over 20 years ago. So we have developed real great friendships and relationships with the doctors down there. We have certainly a hematologist that Dr. Rivera was really helpful with us, and then introduced us to the pulmonologists that are working with our families. Dr. Rosa Roman, we're just absolutely blessed.
Dr. Gasque, Dr.
Wilfredo.
Wilfredo de Jesus is a pediatric pulmonologist, so he serves our youngest populations because, like Donna said, we know that this is going to hit us at some point, so we want to nip it from the beginning, and Dr. Wilfredo has been tremendous help in that.
Get paid for this either. They are volunteering for us.
And we got Hilda, who is our HPS representative in Puerto Rico, who, God bless her, she goes to people's homes. She goes in person. For when you're talking about our last Maria, she will go in person and bring them masks and alcohol swabs and anything that they needed. The same thing when it happens with COVID. When COVID hit, she will go check on people and make sure that they have gloves, masks, PPE, all the stuff they needed, and make sure that they were doing okay and following up with their doctors. So Hilda is such a blessing also to be down there helping us.
Absolutely, angels indeed. My hat's off to every single one of them, and particularly, when you're dealing with something that has the differential diagnosis that this syndrome does, up to and even including the potential for transplants, which is, obviously pretty extreme. Are there other standard therapies for HPS patients? What other types of therapies do they require?
Basically, you got to take it one at a time. Obviously the albinism, we have to give them sunblock and, try to help them with their sunglasses, those kind of things. And then we have the bowel disease, and that often needs a platelet transfusion. So our people having a bleeding disorder and a colitis, Crohn's disease, they hemorrhage badly, and then they need platelets rather than blood. You would think they'd need blood, but really the platelets are what stops the bleeding. So it's really just putting a Band-Aid on things. And then our lung disease, where we don't have any treatment per se for Hermansky-Pudlak Syndrome, PF, but we, try to treat just similar to any other PF. And it's not that easy to do, especially down there. And then for lung transplants, there is no transplant center in Puerto Rico. And that's when Carman takes over.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's no transplant in the island. So that's why I'm here, because I have cousins on my mom's side who passed away from lung disease. They didn't have the chance of having a transplant. I came here for grad school. When I got diagnosed, I knew I had albinism. I didn't know I had HPS. I got diagnosed when I was here in my master's program. And after reading, we all decided, my parents, and we all decided that the best thing for me was to stay here and be able to have access to that. Now people in Puerto Rico who need transplant have to go through the whole process of relocating. So that's a big part of what we do. We help people understand the system, and we educate them to how to advocate for themselves, how to look into what services are in which state, as each state is different and has their own service availability. So we try to help people make good choices and move where they have accessibility to services as well as a good support, because as you know, for transplant, that's a big one. So for people moving from the island to create a support system that is good enough for a transplant team, it's also a challenge. So they not only have the challenge of having to live in the island with no treatment, but they also have to confront the fact that they'll have to leave everything behind and start all over again and create that community and understand the system and understand their new surroundings. It's a lot.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And just as a quick follow-up, I was actually just last week in Atlanta, I got to meet with the ATS, and one of the things that came up was clinical trials for rare disorders, relatively, rare disorders can be problematic. It's hard to get the attention and the funding sometimes. Is there any sort of research going on into gene therapy or anything like that might be able to treat it at a more molecular level?
Yeah, so we're blessed to have been working with the National Institutes of Health, and we have, a long standing relationship. They have a natural history study for us and have biospecimens there. We've been going there for a while, and there is a major push for gene therapy. Actually, we are helping to support that financially, and so we're working towards gene therapy. It is a single gene disorder, so gene augmentation and gene editing would work. And it's, certainly been proven so far. We're working a little bit on the vector and to make sure that it gets to the right place. The decision was, do you do gene therapy on the bleeding? We have so many options. Do we do it on the bleeding disorder or do we do it on the lungs? And so where do you deliver it? So these are the things.
I vote for the lung first, but that's me.
This is what we're working on now. So we're very much hoping for gene therapy.
Great.
We definitely are.
Donna and Carman, tell our listeners about the HPS network and how they can access your network and try to help support you guys.
Sure, be happy to. It's been going on for 28 years, so we're certainly veteraned in the nonprofit arena. We work really hard with our patients. You've heard the support system that Carman has provided. She's absolutely a blessing. We are international. There are no really other organizations that manage Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome. So we have a global reputation, and we have a patient registry, a contact registry that is 28 years old. So we have, the ability to pull patients when needed. We're actually working on trying to get a preliminary preclinical stuff for a bleeding disorder testing. So we pull our patients and always do specimen collection. We actually are very famous for our design of collecting specimens at our patient conferences, which we've had 28 of them annually. And so one year we call this program We're Drawn Together, and we invite pharmaceuticals, we invite people to come and have a protocol. Their IRB gets approved, and we do informed consenting. And we had 5 different laboratories working with us at our conference, and we needed to do things quickly because one of the projects was on stem cells. So we had to do this very, very fast to get the blood to the labs very quickly. So we had a record-breaking 98 tubes of blood drawn in an hour and 55 minutes. And only one patient fainted, so that was pretty good. And we actually were able to get 4 stool specimens at the same time. So we're really a very enthusiastic, super close cohort of research-ready people that are hoping for attention someday. I have to say that in some ways I feel like a failure because I started this organization to help cure my daughter, and 28 years later, and we don't even have a treatment yet. So it kind of gets a little hard and depressing at times when I think about it. But I know that our job is to provide hope and to keep our people informed. We have a town hall once a month where we very candidly tell everybody what's going on for the month. And that's open invitation. But it's a tough disease. It's, we're fighting for our life, and we're just trying to outrace it.
I know that Donna feels a little that rush of we need to cure this, but we have gone through, we have done major advancements that we are rare disease who has a natural history study. We have people that now know at ATS, now people know Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome. So it's happening. It's slow, not as fast as we like it to be, but it's happening. Changes are made and progress is getting there. But we like it to be faster. I want it to be faster. I didn't want a transplant. I wanted gene therapy, but hey, I'll take what I can get.
That's why Carmen's our therapist.
I can see that. And Donna, I can hear the emotion in your voice. This is your daughter, Carman. I know you've been suffered from this as well. 28 years.
I am actually listed right now. I am listed at Brigham Young Women for lung transplant currently.
Are you? Okay. Well, we certainly, our hearts are with you on that, and I'm right there with you. I really would love to see this gets the proper attention, the therapy and treatment. 28 years is a long time to fight for something, and it says a lot that you're willing to continue to go back day after day. So help us help you. We'll Jerry Maguire this thing. And what website can they go to? Where can people donate to this cause?
That would be very kind. It's hpsnetwork.org.
Excellent. We certainly recommend anyone out there to educate yourselves on this. It is a terrifying but fascinating, disorder, and we certainly hope the best for you and everyone affected, and look forward to promoting your network.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You actually are helping us so much by giving us parameters. We're very, very excited for you to help us with the equipment that we're going to be using at the clinic. So you have done amazing for us, and we are so appreciative.
Well, we're just trying to get the word out there, and it was fate that we met at the ATS and then again at the ATS meetings, and we knew we had to do something. So Donna, Carman, thank you again for being on our podcast.
Thank you so much.
You've reached the end of another episode of the Exhale podcast. Don't forget to follow us for upcoming new episodes and recommend this podcast to friends and family. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to you joining us again on the Exhale podcast, brought to you by Vitalegraph.